In the shadowy corridors of antiquity, where empires rose and fell, where cities sparkled and were later lost to sands or jungles, the might of an army often wrote the destiny of civilizations. From the thundering hooves on the vast steppes of Asia to the disciplined marches on the cobbled roads of Rome, some military forces emerged that were so formidable, their very names would send shivers down the spines of their adversaries. These are not mere armies, they are legends, whispers of which still echo through time. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more epic content. Now let's embark on a journey to unveil the 10 most feared armies of the ancient world, forces so powerful that their tales of conquest and valor have transcended millennia. The Roman legions. In a time when the world was fragmented into city-states, tribes, and kingdoms, the Roman Empire stood out as a beacon of power, its dominion stretching from the sun-kissed coasts of Iberia to the fertile valleys of the Nile. At the heart of this sprawling empire was the Roman legion, an unparalleled force that inspired both awe and dread across continents. The Romans ingeniously structured their legions to be versatile and adaptive. Each legion, consisting of about 5,000 men, was further divided into cohorts, centuries, and contubernia, tent groups. This modular structure allowed for flexibility on the battlefield, ensuring the Romans could react swiftly to any adversary or situation. What truly set the legions apart was their rigorous training regimen. While many ancient armies relied heavily on temporary levies or mercenary forces, the Romans invested time in professionalizing their soldiers. A Roman legionary was not just a warrior, he was a highly trained professional, skilled both in combat and in building fortifications. Their discipline was legendary, allowing them to maintain order in the heat of battle when other forces might scatter. The Roman legions employed an array of tactics that were groundbreaking for their time. The famous testudo, or tortoise formation, where soldiers would align their shields to form an impenetrable barrier, became symbolic of Roman military ingenuity. Equipped with the short stabbing sword known as the gladius and the large rectangular shield called the scutum, the Roman infantryman was prepared for both offense and defense. Add to this the pilum, a javelin designed to pierce enemy shields and render them useless, and you had a soldier equipped for multiple combat scenarios. Yet their prowess wasn't limited to combat alone. The legions were also master engineers. They built roads, bridges, and fortifications, all of which not only facilitated quicker movement across vast territories, but also solidified Roman presence wherever they went. The roads they constructed, like the famous Via Appia, allowed for rapid deployment and movement of legions, a strategic advantage that contributed greatly to their military successes. The Persian Achaemenid Army. In the magnificent heart of the ancient East, where the vast Persian Empire sprawled from the Aegean Sea to the Indus River, lies the backbone of this grand empire. The formidable Achaemenid army awed both friend and foe alike. In its prime, the Achaemenid Empire was the most colossal empire the world had seen. It was a melting pot of cultures, languages, and traditions, and stitching this vast tapestry together was the Persian military, a force so diverse and vast that it was said that when they marched, they drank rivers dry. At the very core of this military might was an elite unit known as the Immortals. These were the crème de la crème of the Persian forces, always numbering exactly 10,000. If one fell in battle, another quickly took his place, giving the illusion of immortality. Clad in shimmering scale armor and wielding a variety of weapons, from bows to spears, the Immortals were a sight to behold on the battlefield, and their mere presence often struck fear into the hearts of their adversaries. One of the hallmarks of the Achaemenid army was its incredible diversity. Given the vastness of the empire, the army was composed of a multitude of ethnic groups, each bringing their own unique combat styles, techniques, and weapons to the table. From the skilled archers of the east to the heavy infantry from the western satrapies, the Persian military was a rich blend of the best that the ancient world had to offer. Beyond sheer combat prowess, the Achaemenids were master administrators and logisticians. The Royal Road, stretching over 2,500 kilometers, facilitated rapid movement of troops across the empire, ensuring that revolts could be quickly quashed and borders secured. This incredible infrastructure, combined with an efficient relay system, meant that the Persian king could deploy his forces swiftly and effectively, a crucial factor in maintaining such a vast domain. The Achaemenids were also astute in psychological warfare. Their grandeur, combined with a penchant for showing mercy to those who surrendered without a fight, often meant cities would open their gates without resistance, fearing the might of the Persian war machine. Through strategic alliances, a meritocratic system that valued talent over pure lineage, and a genuine appreciation for the diverse cultures under their umbrella, the Achaemenid Persians created an army that was not only formidable in battle but also in spirit. The Macedonian Phalanx under Alexander the Great. The vast sunlit fields of ancient Macedonia, where one of history's most dazzling military formations was brought to life, the Macedonian Phalanx. Under the indomitable leadership of the young and ambitious Alexander the Great, this formation became the terror of the ancient world. The Macedonian Phalanx was like no other. Imagine rows upon rows of soldiers standing so close together that their shields overlapped, creating an almost impenetrable wall of bronze. But what truly set them apart was the sarissa, a long spear, sometimes stretching up to 18 feet in length. This was more than double the length of the typical spears of their contemporaries. When the phalanx advanced, the first few rows of soldiers would thrust their sarissas forward, presenting to the enemy a bristling hedge of spear tips. One of the primary strengths of this formation was its unity. When positioned correctly, the phalanx was an unyielding fortress, shielding its users against infantry and cavalry alike. This unity made frontal assaults against it almost suicidal. To stand before a Macedonian phalanx was to face an advancing wall of death. While the phalanx was powerful, it was also cumbersome and could be vulnerable to flanking. However, under Alexander's genius, the phalanx was not used in isolation. It was the centerpiece of a combined arms approach, supported by light infantry, archers, and the famed companion cavalry. This adaptability meant that while enemies focused on finding a way past the phalanx, they were often outflanked and crushed by Alexander's other forces. The psychological impact of the phalanx was as significant as its physical prowess. It was a symbol of Macedonian discipline and unity. Many adversaries, upon seeing the imposing formation, would lose heart even before the battle began. Through the use of the phalanx and his other innovative tactics, Alexander carved an empire stretching from Greece through Asia Minor, Egypt, Persia, and all the way to India. In every major battle from Issus to Gaugamela, the phalanx played a crucial role, driving fear into the hearts of Alexander's enemies. The Mongol Horde. In the vast, open steppes of Mongolia, where life was molded by the harshest elements, a young warrior named Temujin rose to power. Later known as Genghis Khan, he united the scattered Mongol tribes and birthed an army that would redefine the annals of military history. The Mongols were, first and foremost, unparalleled horsemen. From a tender age, they were one with their steeds, mastering the art of shooting arrows with deadly precision while galloping at full speed. This allowed the Mongols to engage in hit-and-run tactics, confusing and exhausting their enemies, only to return with devastating force. Genghis Khan and his successors were not just brute conquerors. They were astute military strategists. They employed advanced spy networks, ensuring they always had a thorough understanding of enemy territories and strategies. They adapted and learned from their foes, incorporating foreign engineers, siege techniques, and even weapons into their ever-evolving war machine. Few could match the Mongols in the realm of psychological warfare. Tales of their conquests, often exaggerated, spread like wildfire. Cities would surrender without a single arrow being fired, paralyzed by fear. For those who resisted and were defeated, the Mongols often employed brutal examples to deter future resistance, further cementing their terrifying reputation. Though renowned for their cavalry, the Mongol Horde was incredibly versatile. They were quick learners, absorbing the strengths of the armies they defeated. This adaptability meant that whether in the open steppes, the dense forests of Europe, or the challenging terrains of China, the Mongols could adjust, adapt, and overcome. Underlying the Mongol military prowess was a deep sense of unity and purpose. Genghis Khan instilled in his warriors a code known as the Yasa, which emphasized loyalty, discipline, and unity. This code transformed the Mongol warriors from mere fighters to bearers of Genghis Khan's vision of a vast, unified empire. The Carthaginian Army. The Mediterranean, with its azure waters, was a battleground for two great powers. On one side stood the burgeoning Roman Republic, and on the other, the ancient and mighty city-state of Carthage, a maritime jewel whose power and influence reached far beyond its African shores, and at the center of its might stood the formidable Carthaginian army. Carthage's power was both its wealth and its cosmopolitan nature. As a significant trade hub, Carthage could muster mercenaries from across the known world. This meant that their army was an exotic blend of Iberian swordsmen, Balearic slingers, Numidian cavalry, and African spearmen, among others. Each brought their unique skills, making the Carthaginian army a cocktail of fighting styles and techniques. When discussing the Carthaginian military, one cannot overlook the military genius of Hannibal Barca. This master tactician, who famously led his army, elephants included, over the Alps to attack Rome directly, demonstrated the versatility and audacity of the Carthaginian force. Hannibal's tactics at battles like Cannae left a mark on military strategy for millennia. Carthage is perhaps best known for its war elephants. These mighty beasts, armored and driven into battle, would often cause panic in enemy ranks. They were the ancient world's equivalent of armored tanks, used both as psychological weapons and as battering rams against enemy lines. While Carthage's land forces were impressive, its navy was unparalleled in the Mediterranean for a time. Their maritime prowess allowed them to protect trade routes, ensuring a steady flow of wealth to fund their vast mercenary armies. It also enabled them to project power far from their homeland, establishing colonies and strongholds throughout the Mediterranean. Despite relying heavily on mercenaries, the Carthaginians were adept at melding these diverse fighters into a cohesive force. They adapted to their enemies' tactics, often learning from their own setbacks. Their resilience was evident in how they rebounded after defeats, always ready to challenge Rome or any other adversary anew. The Assyrian Army. While many ancient civilizations relied on open battlefields for their conquests, the Assyrians became notorious experts at sieging cities. They developed a variety of siege engines and techniques. Large mobile ladders, battering rams, and siege towers were among their arsenal, making the formidable walls of ancient cities less of a sanctuary against Assyrian aggression. Unlike many of their contemporaries, the Assyrian army was not just a mob of warriors. It was a well-organized machine with distinct units and roles. From archers to heavy infantry, from charioteers to sappers, each had a specific role in the grand design of the Assyrian war doctrine. While many armies of the time were still equipped with bronze, the Assyrians were among the early adopters of iron weaponry. This gave them a significant advantage on the battlefield, as iron was tougher and kept its edge longer than bronze, making their weapons more lethal. The Assyrians were not just masters of physical warfare, they were adept at psychological warfare too. They deliberately fostered a reputation for extreme cruelty towards those who resisted them. From flaying their enemies alive to deporting entire populations, the Assyrians used fear as a tool, often resulting in cities surrendering without a fight to avoid their wrath. The Assyrian Empire was vast, and managing such a territory required effective communication. The Assyrians developed a system of relay stations and mounted couriers, allowing messages and orders to be swiftly delivered across their lands. This meant faster response times to revolts and threats, keeping the vast empire in check. Unlike many empires that would raise armies only in times of war, the Assyrians maintained a professional standing army. This meant that they were always ready for war, and their soldiers were continually training and improving, ensuring the army's skills and tactics were always sharp. The Spartan Hoplites. In Sparta, the path of a warrior began at birth. From the tender age of 7, Spartan boys were taken from their homes and placed in the agage, a rigorous training regime that molded them into warriors of unparalleled skill and discipline. By the time they bore the heavy bronze shield and spear of the hoplite, they were not only physically elite, but mentally unyielding. The Spartan hoplites were masters of the phalanx formation, a wall of shields and spears, where each man's shield protected his comrade to his left. This formation, when executed with the precision and discipline of the Spartans, became an almost impenetrable force. Few enemies could withstand the sight, let alone the might, of a Spartan phalanx advancing in unison. The strength of the Spartan hoplites lay not just in their training, but in their deep bond of brotherhood. Spartans trained, dined, and fought side by side. This camaraderie meant that on the battlefield, they were not just fighting for victory, but for the man standing beside them. This sense of unity was their most potent weapon, making them stand firm even when odds were against them. Spartans were known for their minimalist approach to life and war. Their armor was functional, their weapons efficient. There were no frills or unnecessary embellishments. This functional approach meant that every aspect of their warfare was optimized for effectiveness. The reputation of the Spartan hoplites was so formidable that often the mere knowledge of their presence on the battlefield would shake the resolve of their enemies. The Battle of Thermopylae, where a small force of Spartans led by King Leonidas resisted the vast Persian army, became the stuff of legends, highlighting their unwavering spirit and valor. The Hittite Army. Nestled amid the rugged highlands and fertile valleys of modern-day Turkey, the Hittite Empire, at its zenith, wielded an army that was the envy of its age. Chariots were the crown jewels of many ancient militaries, but the Hittites brought their own flair to this majestic war machine. Hittite chariots were typically manned by 3 soldiers, a driver, a shield-bearer, and an archer or spearman. This trio design, as opposed to the 2-man chariots of many contemporaries, added an extra layer of versatility and protection in the thick of battle. While the Bronze Age dominated the weaponry of the ancient world, the Hittites were pioneers in harnessing the formidable strength of iron. Their early mastery over iron working meant they could forge weapons that were sharper, more durable, and capable of piercing through the defenses of their adversaries. The Hittite army wasn't just about brute force. Their military reflected the diverse peoples and cultures under their dominion. Light and heavy infantry, skilled archers, and their unique chariots worked in tandem, providing the Hittites with a range of tactics to outmaneuver and overcome their foes. Aware of the threats that lurked beyond their borders, the Hittites were also astute builders of fortifications. Their cities were protected by monumental walls and intricate gateways. Such defenses not only offered protection against invaders, but were also psychological deterrents, showcasing Hittite strength and resilience. The Hittite art of war wasn't limited to the battlefield. They were pragmatic diplomats, often sealing alliances through marriages and treaties. The famous Treaty of Kadesh between the Hittites and the Egyptians is a testament to their diplomatic acumen. By choosing peace over prolonged conflict, they secured their borders and ushered in prosperity. In the heart of every Hittite soldier was a belief that their endeavors were blessed by the pantheon of gods they revered. This spiritual dimension galvanized their ranks, instilling a fervent belief that their cause was just and divinely ordained. The Maurya Army of India. Historical records and scriptures hint at the vastness of the Mauryan forces in India. With hundreds of thousands of infantrymen, cavalry, charioteers, and the iconic war elephants, the Maurya army was a force of nature, often overwhelming foes with sheer numbers. One cannot speak of the Mauryan military without highlighting their war elephants. Trained for battle, these creatures were not only symbols of royal power, but also strategic assets. In the cacophony of battle, the thundering charge of these behemoths could break enemy lines and spread terror among opposing ranks. Beyond mere muscle, the Maurya army was fortified by intellect. Chanakya, also known as Kautilya, penned the Arthashastra, a seminal treatise on statecraft, economics, and military strategy. This text offered detailed guidance on troop formations, espionage, and diplomacy, ensuring the Mauryan rulers were tactically ahead of their adversaries. The Mauryan infantry was a melting pot of various arms, archers wielding longbows, spearmen with their sharp-tipped shafts, and swordsmen ready for close combat. This versatility allowed the Mauryan commanders to adapt swiftly to the ever-evolving dynamics of the battlefield. They even defeated the Nanda dynasty and resisted the Macedonian forces of Alexander the Great. The eyes and ears of the empire, the Mauryan espionage system, was intricate and effective. Spies were everywhere, gathering intelligence not just within the empire but also from potential adversaries. This ensured that the Mauryan rulers were seldom caught off guard. Despite their overwhelming might, the Mauryas, especially under Ashoka the Great, realized the value of diplomacy over conflict. Ashoka, after the devastating Kalinga War, embraced Buddhism and propagated ideals of peace and dharma, showcasing that the true strength of an empire lies as much in its compassion as in its military might. The ancient Egyptian army. Egypt's lifeblood, the Nile, was not just a source of sustenance but also a highway for military campaigns. The ancient Egyptians, leveraging their deep knowledge of the river, effectively used it for rapid troop movements, catching many adversaries off guard. Before the horse-drawn chariot, armies moved at the speed of a marching soldier. But the Egyptians, having witnessed the power of chariots from their enemies, quickly adapted and made the chariot a cornerstone of their military. These nimble war machines, carrying an archer and a driver, could swiftly cover ground, unleash a barrage of arrows, and retreat before the enemy could respond. The bow was an instrument of death in the hands of Egyptian archers. Their composite bows, crafted from a mix of materials, had a longer range and greater power than simple wooden bows. These archers, often positioned behind infantry or on chariots, rained down arrows, sowing chaos among enemy ranks. Strategically positioned fortresses dotted the borders and key trade routes of ancient Egypt. These were not just defensive structures, but also centers of administration and trade, ensuring control over vast territories and securing vital resources. Leaders like Ramses II, Thutmose III, and Amenhotep II were not mere ceremonial rulers. They often led from the front, their presence in battle both a tactical asset and a tremendous morale booster for the troops. Egyptians were not isolated in their strategic thinking. They observed, learned, and often integrated tactics, weapons, and technologies from foes and allies alike, ensuring that their military apparatus was never outdated. An Egyptian soldier didn't just fight for his pharaoh. He believed he was upholding Mahat, the cosmic order. This divine purpose, reinforced by state-sponsored religious rituals, instilled a fervor in the troops, making them fight with a conviction that they were on the side of the gods. As the sun sets on our exploration of these military behemoths, we're reminded that power, no matter how vast, is ephemeral. Yet, the legacy of these 10 armies has proven enduring. Their strategies have influenced countless generations of warriors. Their tales have become the bedrock of epic poems and stories, and their impact has forever shaped the topography of our world's history. In the vast tapestry of the past, these armies shine brightly, not just for their might, but for their indomitable spirit, resilience, and the indelible marks they left behind. As we step back into our world, let us remember and respect the prowess, the passion, and the profound influence of the most feared armies of the ancient realm. Thanks for tuning in on History's Untold. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to journey further into the fascinating corners of history, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when we unearth another incredible story. Until next time, keep questioning and keep exploring, because history is filled with stories that are just waiting to be told. See you in the next episode.